What was the overall experience like for you? What did you get out of it? And is there anything you would add or change or do differently with it?
Sure. I thought this was a wonderful training. Um, uh, it really, what I liked about it is that it made the complex ideas very actionable for agencies. And it also broke it up into smaller pieces. So it was easier for me as the end user to digest. As Brian said, we are very AI forward at the agency. We use a lot of AI in ethical and transparent way. But this brought up some topics that we are still just learning about, and I thought it was really great to be able to learn, for example, more about deep fakes and get a lot of ideas that we can then disseminate amongst our internal teams as well. And like I said, the information was really given to us in bite-sized nuggets. It was easy to digest and really easy to understand. All things considered, I really enjoyed it. And I think it was one of the AI trainings that has stuck with me a little bit more than maybe some of the other ones have in the past as well. Ryan, what did you think?
I'll kind of piggyback off of Danielle talking about the structure. I really liked how the modules were laid out. I
Mhm.
like that it started kind of simple and kind of introduced you to how AI is integrated into some of this stuff and how some of what's been released is being used. And then kind of as you got deeper into it, the modules got a little bit more advanced. I mean, like
Mhm.
we didn't touch on deepfakes until module 4, and to me, that's like advanced generative AI
Yeah.
and some of the issues that it brings to the table. So I liked that they were short, actionable, and they were also organized in a way where it started as simple as you can with a system like AI, but then kind of really got into the more complex, nuanced issues that could arise like later in module 4 and 5. Overall, I mean, I really loved it. I love a training that can apply to anybody. And what I mean by that is
Mhm.
like I use AI constantly all the time. I'm kind of in the know. I'm listening to podcasts, listening to, the talking heads in the space. But I feel like if you're somebody that's never been introduced to it or really played with it, this training is just as valuable. Like I said, I'm in it all the time, and it brought up things that I hadn't really deeply considered or thought about in the way that they were brought up. So I really liked the way it was laid out and the topics that were introduced.
Was there anything else you discovered or learned like deep fakes? It doesn't have to be an application. It could be just a process or a way of doing business or communication internally or externally that you took away that I don't want to say was a light bulb or an epiphany, but something you learned.
Yeah, I think the topic of transparency of AI generation was really on the forefront for me. We've talked about it before internally, but just hearing more about, having to figure out what information that AI was kind of trained on or being able to credit it where needed. I think that brought up some topics that we were like, hey, we've talked about these a little bit, but we should probably bring them up maybe a little bit more internally as well.
Yeah, one thing that really stuck out to me was in the final module where they're starting to touch on agents and some of the bigger implications that AI can have. They started to touch on echo chambers and
Mm-hmm.
dopamine releases based on responses that AI can give you, and that was something that I hadn't fully considered. And then kind of piggybacking off of that, I found it really intriguing that they brought up trying to remember what data that the models are trained on. I mean, some of the articles or blog posts or the infinite knowledge that they feed into these. I mean, some of that stuff is biased, and in
Mm-hmm.
nature that means the responses it gives back to you will be slightly biased depending on the topic and et cetera, et cetera. But I hadn't considered that. I mean, I know they're trained on very large amounts of data, and but I didn't stop to think like some of that data is inaccurate or biased or what have you. And so trying to remember that it's built off of that kind of stuff is important when you're using it.
So on all those points, but especially that last one, have you thought about doing business differently inside Brandience or being part of a team that talks about these issues and comes up with new protocols for dealing with it. Has it changed? Could it or has it already started to change the way you think about using AI in your business?
Yeah, for sure. I actually am leading our internal AI hub with another coworker who's not on the call, and we have already shared the five little one pager key learning points with our entire AI hub so that they can also be trained in this area and be aware of some of the things that were brought up. We meet monthly with the AI hub, and our next meeting is actually this Wednesday. And so we plan on, bringing this to the table and kind of talking through it and just, making people aware of it, but then also brainstorming like, is this affecting how we're using it? Should we, change some of our policies or procedures or set something up to where you're kind of double checking some of the outputs that it spits back at you.
And then from a new hire perspective as well, we found this training very beneficial, and we're having discussions of possibly including it in all new hire training forms, because when new people come to the business, we don't know the true level of AI understanding that they have. So we think it would be valuable in that sense as well.
Yeah, I mean, I gave that anecdote earlier, but when I started covering the business in the 80s, the way people were onboarded is they had media training programs inside the agencies. And I think
Yeah.
it was probably pretty standard that Gray's was like Y&R's was like McCann's or something. But the world is so much more complex today. And now you get certified by some of your
Yeah.
suppliers, like Google or
Mhm.
Meta or whatever, to do things. Um, so so this might be something you use to help onboard people. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
One of the other things too, I think, just as I said, obviously I didn't take the training, but just listening to the subsequent conversations that have come out of it, we had, as a company, have always talked about making sure that you don't just take generative AI at its word, right? And that there's a due diligence process in place to make sure that what is coming out is accurate. But I feel like just these types of training, even though people know that, to have these types of training that reinforces that and brings it back up to the top is very beneficial.
Yeah.
And so it may not be actually changing a process, but it's making people rethink, because generative AI is so easy to just kind of say, oh, there's my answer, and I'm
Mhm.
moving on.
Well, yeah, it's about critical thinking and reasoning, but the same thing is true about search over time, which is, in the old days we used to do a lot of original research and reference work, and now you do a Google search and those query results, but there may not be the information you really want, and
Mhm.
you still have to go through to the sources and see how and vet them and see how good they are. And the same thing is true with generative AI, which is you need to apply critical thinking to it. So hopefully that's one of the things you take away from this. Um, is there anything that was missing that you think like they should consider or add to it? Questions you have coming out of the program that were unanswered?
I think one thing for me that they may have touched on very slightly, but is how these models actually operate. I think for me personally, I'm very techie. I'm in it. And kind of what you were saying when we hopped on the call is like AI has been around. Now the difference between algorithmic and machine learning versus generative, that's a big difference. But I think a lot of the time it's really easy for people to view technology and be like, oh, that's just a computer chip or that's a line of code. How hard is it to go in and fix, or how hard is it to go in and modify? Well, that's not how these models are. I mean, the researchers themselves don't fully know how they operate. They turn something on and it might do something they weren't expecting, and then they have to stop and research it and play with it. And so it's not just a line of code that they can go in and modify. And I think that's a very important thing to remember all the time, especially as it gives you bias answers or something. I know a couple of weeks ago they had ChatGPT
Yeah.
specifically had a problem where it was a yes man for everything, and it was a problem.
The sycophant, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so I think they could have touched on that more because again, if you're techie or you're into computers and stuff
Right.
like that, it's easy to be like, oh, it's just a line of code. Go in and modify it. But that's not how these operate at all. They're very much I mean, they're the most powerful form of technology we've probably seen, and they're only getting stronger, faster, more efficient. So
It's scary. I mean, when I met with Brian and Laura, we were talking about Sydney, which was Claude's thing, which went
mhm.
berserker and they lobotomized
Yeah,
her. But um, I think the fact that ChatGPT did that and they had to adjust it, because these things are thinking on their own and they're not
yeah,
necessarily thinking in a lucid,
yeah, right.
Yeah.
realistic
Yeah.
way. And if people become more and more reliant on it, I think we're kind of in a dangerous position. I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
anyway, that's a whole nother. It's a valid point, that the developers don't always understand it. So you could ask why is a global or national policy or even an industry policy, why we're rolling it out now. But at least you now are ethically trained in it.
Right.
Yep.
Does that certification mean anything to you? Would you use that label or shield in any way?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it speaks to the level of commitment that we have to, again, ethically use this type of technology as a company, right? And the time that we're willing to invest in our employees to make sure that we're all kind of keeping up with it as best we can and that we're using it in the best way for our clients and ourselves. So absolutely, Ryan and I are going to smack them on our LinkedIn soon.